Good evening, I'm Jim Lara. On the NewsHour tonight, the news of this Tuesday, then the latest on the stock market's almost 900-point jump today. 3 politics stories, what the presidential candidate said today with a week to go, what 4 newspaper editors said in their presidential endorsements, and what about the Alaska fallout from the Ted Stevens conviction. Plus, a debate about government help for the American auto industry.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer is provided by
With hard work and careful planning, Pacific Life can help you retire the way you want to. With mutual funds and life insurance, and with annuities that can guarantee an income for the rest of your life. Your financial professional and Pacific Life can help you reach your retirement goals. Pacific Life, the power to help you succeed.
With soaring energy prices and global climate change, there are good reasons for believing in wind. Wind energy is clean and plentiful, and it answers the call for sustainable ways to create the electricity we need. We know because our sole focus is developing technology that uses the energy of the wind to generate electricity. America has some of the world's most abundant wind resources, and Vestas is here to help harness them.
Chevron.
And the National Science Foundation, supporting education and research across all fields of science and engineering.
And with the ongoing support of these institutions and foundations. And
this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Stock markets around the world shot back up today. A rally on Wall Street took off late in the day. It came partly on expectations the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates tomorrow. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 889 points to close at 9065, up 11%. The NASDAQ rose 143 points to close at 1649, a gain of nearly 10%. Elsewhere, the benchmark index in Hong Kong gained more than 14%. That helped set the tone on markets across Europe.
The expectations have got a lot better than in the last few days because of the good numbers from Japan and Asia in general, where, through an intervention of the central bank, the yen went a little bit lower, and that hopefully will have a stabilizing effect on the economy.
The rebound in stocks defied the latest economic news. The Conference Board, a private research group, reported U.S. consumer confidence sank in September to its lowest mark in 41 years. And Whirlpool, the nation's largest home appliance maker, announced it's cutting 5,000 jobs worldwide by the end of next year. That's nearly 7% of its workforce. Talk of a federal rescue for General Motors and Chrysler intensified today. It was widely reported the Treasury is considering a package of up to $10 billion. That funding would enable GM to buy Chrysler. At the White House, spokeswoman Dana Perino would not confirm any details. We'll have more on this story later in the program tonight. This was 1 week to go day in the presidential campaign, and the candidates were out in force for a final push. A handful of critical states got most of the attention. The 2 campaigns started the day in Pennsylvania, where polls showed Democrat Barack Obama leading Republican John McCain. Later, McCain moved on to North Carolina, and Obama headed to Virginia. He's been making headway in both those states as well. McCain vowed today he will never give up. Obama called for his supporters not to relax. We'll have more on the campaign right after this news summary. Senators McCain and Obama called today for Ted Stevens to resign. The Alaska Republican was convicted yesterday of violating federal ethics laws. In a statement, McCain said Senator Stevens has broken his trust with the people and he should now step down. Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, the Republican vice presidential nominee, also urged Stevens to quit. We'll have more on this story later in the program tonight. There were growing signs today the U.S. and Afghanistan may hold talks with some elements of the Taliban. The Wall Street Journal reported top White House and U.S. military officials are weighing that option in a bid to stabilize Afghanistan. State Department spokesman Robert Wood said the idea is part of an ongoing review.
You've got to try to bring together the various elements, in addition to military, political, economic, social, and try to sort of mesh them into a cohesive strategy. And that's something that we want to try to, to do better in Afghanistan. And what's really important here is that the Afghans come together and reconcile.
Separately, political and tribal leaders from Afghanistan and Pakistan agreed today to open a dialogue with the Taliban. The governor of a key border region in Pakistan said the time is right.
We also feel that certain things have happened in the meantime, which have made our effort perhaps more relevant and more promising, because we are hearing of other countries also talking about the need for dialogue for peace and reconciliation.
The Taliban quickly rejected the idea. A spokesman argued any talk would be worthless as long as foreign forces remain in Afghanistan. The government of Iraq today condemned a U.S. raid inside Syria. American officials said a leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq was killed in the helicopter assault on Sunday. An Iraqi spokesman said the Constitution does not allow Iraq to be used as a staging ground to attack neighboring countries. The Syrians insisted 8 civilians died in the raid. They ordered an American school and cultural center in Damascus to close. The Iraqi cabinet formally moved today to reopen talks on a long-term security deal with the U.S. The Iraqis are seeking new, unspecified amendments. U.S. officials said they have not seen those proposals, so it's too early to say what might happen. A UN mandate authorizing U.S. troops in Iraq expires at the end of this year. Boeing and its largest union agreed to a tentative contract last night. It could end a strike by the machinists union that lasted nearly 2 months. The agreement includes a 15% raise over 4 years. It's subject to ratification by some 27,000 workers at plants around Seattle. Last night, they reacted cautiously.
No, I'll tell everybody to read the fine print in the contract. I voted against the union's recommendations in the past, so I'm really looking forward to having a good contract this time.
That's about the future, It's maybe not affect the people like me that are getting, close to retirement, but our kids and the new people coming on board here, that's something that's concerns them.
Industry experts have estimated the strike cost Boeing about $100 million a day. The Christian Science Monitor announced today it will stop printing a daily edition and publish online instead. It's the first national U.S. newspaper to make that move amid declining readership and ad revenues. The company will continue to print a weekend edition. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now, Wall Street's big jump. The candidates begin their last week. Presidential endorsements, Stevens of Alaska, and help for the big three. The Dow Jones Industrial Average did close up a whopping 889 points today. The question is why? And we pose it to Jim Ellis, the assistant managing editor of Business Week magazine in New York. Jim Ellis, welcome.
Thanks, Jim.
What happened, Jim? That was unexpected. What happened?
It was unexpected. I mean, there was a confluence of sort of good news. First of all, a lot of investors woke up after the weekend and figured out that there's real value in this market. I mean, Warren Buffett's been saying it for a couple of weeks, but people are looking at the value. The way we value markets is what times earnings are stocks selling at. Right now, it's about less than half of what it was last October. So people were saying that they could pick up stocks like Alcoa for less than 5 times earnings. The entire market is selling for less than 11 times earnings. It would have been closer to 25 or 30 just a year ago. So that was one reason. The second reason was that people are finally convinced that international central banks are really serious about putting a floor under the banking business. That's a good thing. It means that the financial system won't totally collapse. And then lastly, we're seeing some real hope now that interest rates for credit are actually starting to come down. Banks are more willing to lend to one another, and in the LIBOR rate and the rate that banks use to lend to one another in London is coming down. And this morning, both the Bank of England and the Swiss National Bank offered $20 billion to their own banks to prop them up. Only $10 billion was requested. That means that banks are finally finding other ways, market ways, to support themselves rather than having to go out and, basically put their hand out for the Federal Treasury.
And the Federal Reserve here in the United States is expected to lower interest rates again tomorrow, correct?
Right. I mean, the big question now is not whether it's going to happen, but it's how much. In other words, will the Fed go down a half point, which most people expect, though in the financial futures markets, there's a 40% bet now that the Fed might actually drop 3/4 of a point. That's unprecedented, and it also is going to, it might put us down below 1% interest, which is amazing.
Yeah. Now back to the first reason you gave, that people were buying. They see bargains. Is that what they're doing?
That's it. I mean, basically, value investors are people who believe you only buy stocks when they are selling cheaply. As long as you think the stock will continue to stay in business, if the company stays in business, then you buy when others don't want to buy. That's what's made Warren Buffett rich, and a lot of people are saying these are too cheap to actually pass up.
Should this be seen then as a one-day wonder, Jim, and it'll go back down again tomorrow, or is it possible to even speculate?
It's very difficult to talk about, are we at a bottom? I mean, trying to pick a market bottom is like trying to catch a falling knife. It's not the kind of thing that most people want to willingly do. However, we've seen the market come down a lot in the past year. We've lost about, here in the U.S., we probably lost about $12 trillion in market value just since last October. Globally, stocks have come down more than $24 trillion. You're a lot closer to a bottom today than you would have been a few weeks ago. The other thing is that market bottoms are normally marked by a lot of volatility, as we're seeing now, and a lot of people saying that the worst is, that the world is over. We saw that with the confidence numbers earlier today that said people have never been this worried about the economy. Those are usually marks that we are approaching a bottom.
And that usually, when that kind of figure comes out, that usually affects the market negatively rather than positively, does it not?
Well, but in this case, a lot of people are thinking that there's, not a lot of reason to go down any further, and they're also becoming more and more convinced that a lot of money that's been sitting on the sidelines, too frightened to invest, is going to come flooding back in. A lot of people in the financial markets make money only when they're investing. They're not making money on just holding cash, and so a lot of investment funds, a lot of hedge funds want to come back in. They're just waiting for what they consider to be a lower mark in the market.
And this could have been that day, right? We don't know yet until tomorrow
Well, I think
comes.
it might be. It's dangerous to say that this is the day, but I have a feeling that if we could maintain this for another couple of weeks and let the volatility drop, the intraday trading volatility, then people will feel safe about coming back into the markets.
Okay. Jim Ellis, thank you as always for your information and insight. And now, with a week to go, what the candidates said today, Gwen Eiffel has our presidential campaign report.
Hatless and shunning an umbrella in the steady rain, Barack Obama appealed to thousands of drenched supporters to stick with him for the campaign's final week.
This is an unbelievable crowd for this kind of weather. Thank you so much. And I just want all of you to know that if we see this kind of dedication on Election Day, there is no way that we're not going to bring change to America.
Appearing in Chester, Pennsylvania as part of a final tour of battleground states, Obama recalled another intemperate campaign day.
You know, we began this journey on a day that was actually a little worse than today. It was 7 degrees outside. 22 months ago on the steps of the old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois. And back then we didn't have much money and we didn't have many endorsements. We weren't given much of a chance in the polls or by the pundits. We knew how steep this climb was going to be. But I also knew this. I knew that the size of our challenges had outgrown the smallness of our politics. I believe the Democrats and Republicans and Americans of every political stripe, they were hungry, they were desperate for new ideas and new leadership and a new kind of politics. One that favors common sense over ideology. One that focuses on those values and ideals that we hold in common as Americans. And 21 months later, my faith in the American people has been vindicated. That's how we've come so far, so close, because of you. That's how we're going to change this country, because of you. And that's why in this last week, we cannot afford to slow down or to sit back or to let up. Whether it's rain or sleet or snow, we are going to go out and we are going to vote because it's too much at stake.
As part of his closing argument, Obama is also devoting time to defending his tax plan, one that John McCain has criticized as wealth redistribution.
If you make less than $250,000 a year, how many make less than $250,000 a year? Raise your hand. Actually, it's just about everybody here, but you want to keep your hands in your pocket. It's too cold. If you make less than $250,000 a year, and that includes, by the way, 98% of small businesses and 99.9% of plumbers, you will not see your taxes increase one single dime. Not your payroll tax, not your capital gains tax, not your income tax, no tax, because the last thing you need is higher taxes when we're in a recession like this, and you won't get one under an Obama administration. Let me tell you, in the end, the choice isn't between tax cuts or no tax cuts. Both John McCain and I want to give tax cuts. The question is who we're going to give it to. Whether you believe we should just reward wealth or whether we should also reward work and the workers who create wealth. It's about whether you believe in an America where opportunity and success is open to all people and not just some people. Everybody who's willing to work for it. And that's the kind of America that I want to build when I'm president of the United States of America.
Obama's running mate, Joe Biden, found sunnier weather in Ocala, Florida, where he stressed the importance of strengthening the middle class.
Barack Obama and I recognize that when the American middle class does well, the rich do just fine and the poor do better. Everyone is better off. And so we want to rebuild the middle class. And here's what we'll do. Cut taxes for working people. Cut taxes for small businesses. Encourage and lay out a clear plan to end our dependence on foreign oil. Invest in rebuilding America, its roads, its bridges, its water systems, creating right here in the state of Florida over that period 121,000 new high-paying jobs.
Republicans John McCain and Sarah Palin focused their combined firepower on Hershey, Pennsylvania. In the heart of a state McCain has pledged to win.
It's wonderful to be back in Pennsylvania, and it's wonderful to fool the pundits, because we're going to win the state of Pennsylvania. My friends, we're going to win it on November 4th. And you're going to get out the vote, and we're going to win.
Both McCain and Palin took aim at the Obama tax plan.
Now, you have to really listen to our opponent's words through all of this. Listen to what he's saying, because now, he had been hiding behind his real agenda of redistributing your hard-earned money. He says that he's for a tax credit, which is when government takes more of your money and gives it away to someone else according to a politician's priorities. Now, opposed to John McCain, who is for a real tax cut, which means when government takes less of your earnings in the first place.
You know, after months of campaign trail eloquence, we finally learned what Senator Obama's economic goal is: to spread the wealth. In a radio interview he revealed this week, he said the same thing, that one of the, quote, tragedies of the civil rights movement is that it didn't bring about redistributive change. Can you imagine? You see, Senator Obama believes in redistributing wealth, not in policies that grow our economy and create jobs. He said that even though lower taxes on investment help our economy, he favors higher taxes on investment for, quote, fairness. There's nothing fair about driving our economy into the ground. We all suffer when that happens. And that's the problem with Senator Obama's approach to our economy. He's more interested in controlling wealth than creating it. In redistributing money instead of spreading opportunity. I'm going to create wealth for all Americans by creating opportunity for all Americans. Senator Obama is running to be redistributionist in chief. I'm running to be commander in chief. Senator Obama is running to spread the wealth. I'm running to create wealth. Senator Obama is running to punish the successful. I'm running to make everyone successful.
McCain also accused Obama of taking a victory lap before the election is decided, mocking the Democrats' plan to deliver a primetime national address tomorrow night.
Now, my friends, let me give you the state of the race today. There's 1 week to go. We're a few points down. The pundits wrote us off, as they have several times before. My opponent is out working out the details with Speaker Pelosi and Senator Reid on their plans to raise your taxes, increase spending, and concede defeat in Iraq. He's measuring the drapes, and he's planned his first address to the nation before the election. By the way, no one will delay the World Series game with an infomercial when I'm president. I guess I'm old-fashioned about these things. I prefer to let the voters weigh in before presuming the outcome.
The GOP ticket canceled another afternoon appearance in Pennsylvania because of the inclement weather. McCain said he has come from behind before, even when popular opinion appeared to turn against him. According to editor and publisher of News Industry magazine, Obama has been endorsed by 222 newspapers, McCain by 93. At least 43 of those publications endorsed President Bush in 2004.
And speaking of newspaper endorsements, here is Judy Woodruff.
Joining me now are 4 editorial page editors to discuss their newspaper's presidential endorsements. Backing John McCain are Robert Kittle from the San Diego Union-Tribune and Bob Rayner from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. And backing Obama are J.R. Labby from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and Harold Jackson from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thank you, all 4 of you, for being with us. Robert Kittle, I'm going to start with you, the San Diego Union-Tribune. You endorsed John McCain. Why?
Well, we based our endorsement, Judy, primarily on the economic policies that the two candidates espouse. And frankly, we think that McCain's emphasis on tax cuts and on controlling spending are what are needed to get the economy moving again. And we are troubled by the tax increases that Barack Obama has advocated. He wants to increase the capital gains tax, which is particularly hurtful to businesses and to job growth, and its general emphasis on taxing the wealthy to redistribute wealth. I think the emphasis ought to be on spurring the economy broadly to generate more wealth across the board. So it was really on the economic issues that we based our endorsement.
Now, J.R. Labby, Fort Worth Star-Telegram, you were one of, 43 newspapers so far around the country that endorsed George W. Bush in 2004, but have gone to the Democrat this year. Why?
It wasn't an easy decision, Judy, but we approached this recommendation by looking at 5 areas that the newspaper had historically weighed in on, issues like the economy, energy, tax policy, health care, immigration entitlements. And by looking at both men's policy stands, we felt that Obama's more closely tracked where we had been on those issues. Beyond that, we felt very strongly that McCain may have made a short-term tactical stroke with his selection of Sarah Palin, but strategically long-term, we believe that that was a mistake. Her sell-by date came and went fairly quickly for us. While it energized the Republican base to get the voters out that they need, we really didn't think she had the readiness to be the #2 in this nation should something happen to the commander-in-chief. And that was important to us, but it was not an easy decision in a county that is the reddest of the red in Texas and second only to Orange County in its Republicanism.
Well, I want to come back to some of those points you made, but let me turn now to Bob Rayner from the Richmond, Virginia Times-Dispatch. Another endorsement for John McCain. Tell us why.
As with the San Diego paper, Judy, we were concerned about some of Obama's economic policies. We mentioned that in the Great Depression, which followed a financial panic similar to the one we're seeing today, two of the big mistakes in economic policy were raising taxes and restricting trade. And Obama has made clear that he's going to increase taxes on capital, on businesses. We don't think that's wise. He's been all over the place on trade, so that worries us. But another theme that we hit was that we believe that McCain is simply superior in terms of judgment experience on foreign policy and military affairs. And we still believe this is a dangerous world. We mentioned in the editorial that we're a little concerned that one of the dangers is that the people of the United States are not so convinced that this is a dangerous world anymore. So we believe that McCain is head and shoulders superior to Obama in terms of experience. You know, Obama has talked about Biden helping him on foreign affairs, and from the comments we've seen from Joe Biden recently, it doesn't seem like he's going to be much help in that department.
All right, well, let's, and again, I want to come back to some of those points, but Harold Jackson, to you next, the Philadelphia Inquirer. Why Barack Obama?
Well, we did a similar thing in looking at the candidates' records in a series of editorials that we did in the 2 months prior to our endorsement. And on each one of those issues, Barack Obama was the superior person. He was most closely aligned to the positions that we had taken. The bottom line for us is that we felt that there were two real criteria to look at here, and the most important one being leadership, but hope also was one that we looked at, and we said in the end that hope, when properly directed, yields positive results. And we feel that Barack Obama was the best person for America at this time when it's looking for hope.
Bob Kittle, I want to come back to you in San Diego. You said that the economy, that their positions on the economy were the main factors in your decision. Was this mostly a pro-John McCain argument or an anti-Barack Obama argument in your mind?
Well, that's a good question, Judy, and I think it was pretty much even on both sides. I mean, we had as many concerns about Barack Obama as we had favorable things to say about John McCain. So it's hard to get into everyone's heads, and we had a very spirited debate on our editorial board. It wasn't a unanimous point of view among our editorial writers. But in general, I think the general expectation was that McCain also brought more leadership to the position, and that while Barack Obama has demonstrated a great articulate way of describing the issues. He's knowledgeable about the issues, but he really is untested. So that's a bit of a gamble. And with McCain, as we stressed in the editorial, he has been tested, and we don't have the same kinds of concerns that we would have with Barack Obama in terms of experience.
Now, Bob Kittle, some of the others have mentioned the vice presidential choice. How much of a factor was that for you?
Well, I think it was a negative factor, quite frankly. Not a huge one, not a decisive one, but
you mean negative?
Sarah Palin's
Negative
in terms of John McCain's judgment. That is, Sarah Palin. Frankly, I think most members of our editorial board would question whether she's ready to step into the Oval Office. And so, as I said, it wasn't a decisive factor, but it was a negative factor for John McCain in the minds of our editorial board.
J.R. Labby, back to you in Fort Worth. Let me ask you the same question. How much of this was pro-Barack Obama, and how much of it was a concern or an argument against John McCain?
I would say that the pro-Obama outweighed the negative McCain, but we certainly looked at issues that that we are concerned about with Obama's policy. Texas is a very strong right-to-work state. Free trade is extremely important to us. We are right plunk down in the middle of the NAFTA superhighway, so NAFTA is important. That is a concern of ours when it comes to looking at Obama's stated platforms about free trade. But we believed in looking at the overall policies, and like Harold said, there is that issue of hope, that ability to energize ethnicities, gender, race, and youth that have never been engaged before in the political process. We don't believe that that can be diminished. And that young vote is going to be particularly important because they don't see black and white. They don't see the sort of socialism mantra that keeps being hyped by the Republicans as something to fear in Obama. They don't see it that way. So that young vote is going to make a tremendous difference in this election. Senator McCain is a war hero. He served his country nobly. But from a North Texas perspective, he has been no friend to our local defense industry and some of the programs he's been against. And his work on the campaign finance bill sat uneasy with some of our people who believe that free speech is manifested in how one gives their money to support candidates. So there was reason for people in our area not to like McCain.
Bob Rayner, I want to try to get at this question of how much was this for McCain and against Obama. But what about the factor that we just heard J.R. Labby mention, this whole notion of generational change and hope? Did that factor into your discussion?
Well, we mentioned that in our editorial. I mean, and we praised Obama for his temperament, and we praised him for the historical nature of the campaign and how much excitement he's generated. Our editorial was primarily a pro-McCain editorial. We did criticize Obama on some policy points, some specific things that bothered us. The fact that he was very slow, very reluctant to admit that the surge in Iraq worked. We're distressed by his support of the union check card bill, and we were equally concerned that he simply doesn't have a whole lot of experience in foreign affairs. So we have some concerns about Obama. We didn't question his character, but the focus of the editorial was on McCain's strengths, both in policy, particularly economic and foreign affairs, but also his judgment. We think he's demonstrated judgment and, frankly, political courage from time to time, not only with supporting the surge long before it was popular. He's frequently gone against his own party when it's not always been in his best interest.
I was just going to say, let me step in here because I want to come back to all four of you on another question. But Harold Jackson, let me come to you on this question of how much for Obama. You mentioned the two factors you mentioned were leadership and hope. How much of what you discussed were negatives where John McCain is concerned? And how much disagreement was there on your editorial board?
Well, we never discussed the internal workings of the editorial board. There was dissent. In fact, we did something very different, unheard of for our paper. We actually ran, in addition to running the endorsement editorial, we ran a short dissent that was written by the members of the board who dissented. But our editorial, our main editorial, was about Barack Obama. It listed his positives on a number of issues, about 6 or 7 issues that we thought were important to Americans. Now, we did discuss John McCain, and what we said about John McCain is that there were some troubling aspects about his candidacy, and very clearly, the Sarah Palin selection as vice presidential candidate was troubling to us. It smacked of pandering to certain elements of the electorate. And, you know, it was troubling. It seemed to be something in which John McCain was again doing a Hail Mary, trying for something, and possibly jeopardizing his campaign in the process. And you have to wonder if he would be that type of president who would take that type of chance and perhaps jeopardize the nation.
Let me just come back to all four of you very quickly and ask you what reaction you're getting. Bob Kittle, to you first in San Diego. What sort of reaction have you gotten from your readers?
Well, the readers are on both sides of the issue. San Diego is a red county, but I would say most of the letters that we've received have argued for Obama, because I think readers tend to write when they object to an editorial. You don't get as many letters saying we agreed with the editorial. So we've certainly aired a number of letters from people who say, well, you also endorsed George W. Bush, so your endorsement doesn't mean much to us 4 years later, and we're going with Obama. So it's actually, it started a good debate.
I'm going to quickly turn to J.R. Labby. I want to get to all three of you in a minute.
Well, yesterday, Judy,
go ahead.
It was quiet, too quiet yesterday. I was surprised at the lack of immediate reaction to the endorsement. Since then, we have, like Bob has had in San Diego, you hear from the people who don't agree with your recommendation. And as of noon today, we had about 170 readers who had canceled their subscriptions, including the Tarrant County Republican Party headquarters, which canceled its paper. They'll be back, but they are sending us a message.
And Bob, very quickly, Bob Rayner in Richmond, reaction from the readers?
We didn't have a quiet day. We heard from a lot of our readers. A lot were thrilled that we endorsed McCain, and there were obviously quite a few upset that we didn't. We endorsed Bush the last two elections. I think some of our readers on the Republican side were worried that we might endorse Obama because we'd written some editorials that praised him. So they were greatly relieved that we came down on McCain's side.
And finally, Harold Jackson in Philadelphia. What did you hear?
Well, yes, we heard from readers. We got the most comment from our decision to run the dissenting opinion underneath our endorsement editorial. Our liberal Democratic readers just could not see why we would do that. It was unprecedented. We did it. And I think that the result is probably something positive, and that it started a good discussion about that process among editorial boards.
Well, this has been a great discussion, and we thank you all for joining us. Harold Jackson in Philadelphia, Bob Rayner in Richmond, J.R. Labby in Fort Worth, and Bob Kittle in San Diego. Thank you all.
And another politics story. What next for Ted Stevens? Ray Suarez reports.
A day after a Washington jury found the Alaska senator guilty of 7 felony corruption charges, we take a closer look at the political implications of the verdict and gauge reaction in Stevens' home state with Michael Carey, host of a weekly political program for Alaska Public Television and columnist for the Anchorage Daily News. He joins us now from Anchorage. Michael Carey, was the trial and its outcome yesterday closely followed in the state?
Intensely. It was the lead story virtually every day in the Anchorage Daily News, Alaska's largest newspaper, and also on the television stations here, especially Channel 2, the local NBC affiliate.
Now, before the jury announced its verdict, this already was one of the closest Senate races in the country. Is the verdict already having an impact?
We think so, but we really don't know. It's going to take a few days. There's been a great deal of response in favor and support of Senator Stevens, particularly on talk radio, where people have called in to say they've known him for years, they trust him, they think he got a raw deal. Some of them even say, we don't care how they do it in Washington, D.C., we love Ted. But I think as time passes and people begin to look at what the alternatives are for Ted Stevens, they may make a different decision when they finally come to vote.
Didn't Senator Stevens from the outset push for a fast verdict on this, push for the jury trial to go ahead right away so that there'd be a judgment before the election?
Yes, that was his idea. He pushed the prosecutors and told them he wanted a trial soon, and under the law he had that right and proceeded with it. I don't think, quite obviously, he didn't get the outcome he expected or wanted.
What have the state Republicans, who are very prominent and strong in Alaska, had to say about this verdict?
Well, the official spokesman of the Republican Party came out and said, you know, not only is this a dark day for Alaska, but we have to worry about Mark Begich, the Democrat, becoming a U.S. Senator, what it might mean if the Democrats have 60 senators in a filibuster-proof Senate. But the Republican Party now is deeply divided over the response of John McCain and Sarah Palin.
Now, national Republicans, including Mitch McConnell, the minority leader, who's in a tough race himself in Kentucky, Senator John Ensign, who's running the Republican senatorial effort, have both appeared to cut Ted Stevens loose. Does that kind of thing make an impression inside Alaska, or is it kind of separated from what goes down in the lower 48?
At first, people will perceive it as people like McConnell saying, Senator Stevens, there's the plank, jump. But after a while, I think as things set in with people, they'll realize that this is a matter of national concern, that people are talking about it all over the United States. And I suspect in the long run, our opinion will in many ways replicate national opinion. Not for those people who are deeply tied to Senator Stevens, have personal relationships with him, but with the larger population.
Now, one prominent Alaska Republican is also the Republicans' candidate for vice president. What has Governor Palin had to say about the Stevens verdict? Has she been really explicit about her feelings on this?
Well, yesterday I saw in a tarmac shot where she came out and said the proverbial, this is a sad day for Alaska, and then sort of left it there. Today she's joined with John McCain in saying that Senator Stevens needs to step down and the Republican Party needs to be protected. It's important for the viewers to know that Ted Stevens and John McCain have never been friends, and this is in some measure a continuation of their battle over earmarks and a personal rivalry that's gone on for years, if not decades.
Previous to Senator Stevens' electoral problems, was he close with the Alaska governor?
Senator Stevens, no. They're a different generation, come from different backgrounds. Senator Stevens was in the Alaska legislature when Governor Palin was born. Whole different eras and different backgrounds. During the campaign, Senator Stevens appeared at one or two events with Governor Palin, and this was a huge surprise to voters here because it suggested that Senator Stevens really needed Governor Palin's help in this election, and he's never asked anybody for help in that way.
Presumably it's too late for the ballots to be changed, for the Alaska Republicans to nominate someone else for that seat. What are, under Alaska electoral law, some of the possibilities that could play out now?
Well, Senator Stevens, if Mark Begich wins this election, and he's run a very good campaign, he's a very skilled young man. I say that he's 44 years old, I believe, but 40 years younger than Ted Stevens. If he wins on Tuesday, he will be the U.S. Senator, and that'll be the end of it. If Senator Stevens prevails, he will go back to Washington and face all the process that would be involved there of a senator who's been indicted, and perhaps some independent ethics questions as well. Then there'd be the question of would he step down? What would he do if he was sent to prison? These are all hypotheticals that we can only remotely imagine. I think the important thing to know here is Senator Stevens' character. He is not a man who is going to back down. He is never going to give up. His goal in life, it seems, has been to be a United States Senator, and he's going to be a United States Senator as long as he can.
Is he back in Alaska yet to campaign?
No, he's coming back tomorrow, is my understanding. There are various press requests in to meet him on Thursday night. He will be participate in a debate on public broadcasting here in Anchorage. I'll be one of the journalists questioning him. And that's looming as an important event here in the next few days.
What has he had to say to the people of his state so far?
The same thing that's been printed all over the United States, that he thinks that this was really a Justice Department that was, or lawyers and the Justice Department who were out of control, that the court case was handled very badly, that he was mistreated. He's an innocent man. He's going to prove it, and he will prove it on appeal, or whatever method it takes to vindicate himself.
Were there a lot of people in Alaska, as far as you could tell from your reporting, who were waiting on the sidelines to see what happened in order to decide where they were on this race?
This is something I really have never quite understood, how many people would really sit back and say, you know, I want to find out if he's innocent. And there's a variety of bad behaviors that went on with Senator Stevens and the other people involved in the corruption trial. Would people really sit back and say, I need to know he was innocent, I need to know he was guilty? Because during the campaign, both Senator Stevens and his challenger, Mayor Begich of Anchorage, were giving people lots of reasons to vote for them or to vote against them. So I think this has been hyped. I can't prove that, and no pollster that I know of has really talked about it.
Michael Carey in Anchorage, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, throwing out a lifeline to American automakers. Jeffrey Brown has that story.
As the federal government's financial rescue plan develops and expands, one of the nation's most important industries is now asking, what about us? Detroit's Big Three, hemorrhaging money for years, have seen conditions spiral downward quickly in recent weeks. And now General Motors is in merger talks with Chrysler, but says it needs federal help to complete a deal. We look at the situation with David Cole, chairman of the Center for Automotive Research, a not-for-profit institute in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that studies the industry, and Peter Marisi, an economist at the University of Maryland School of Business, who writes frequently on the state of the auto industry. Well, David Cole, GM is the immediate focus right now. How serious are its problems, and how did they grow so quickly?
I think it's really sort of a double-barrel shotgun blast to the gut that they've received, as well as others in the industry. First of all was the rapid run-up in energy prices and the huge transition that we saw in the market in the spring and early summer. And of course, since the meltdown on Wall Street, the credit crisis has really impacted, because it impacts the consumer buying cars, impacts the dealer with their floor planning, and it obviously impacts manufacturers and suppliers. And with the revenue shortfall that we've had in the last couple of months, this has been devastating on cash for the entire industry. GM, Ford, and even the internationals are really under an enormous amount of pressure right now.
Now, staying with you, a lot of the problems of the industry, and we've talked with you on this program over the years, a lot of these programs have been there a long time. Management problems, not dealing with labor costs, not building cars that Americans buyers want to buy. Are those, to what degree are those problems still with us?
Well, in many ways, the industry has changed remarkably. If you look at GM today, they're globally integrated. Their products are much, much better compared to what they were a few years ago. And that's true of many in the industry today. The product execution is really outstanding. The market, however, can shift dramatically more quickly than any manufacturer can change. And of course, one of the really underlying factors in this has been we've had a very narrow product range that was quite profitable, and that was the trucks and SUVs. And one of the key factors in that was the unintended consequences of the corporate average fuel economy standards back in the 70s. And when we hit 1980, we had a collapse in petroleum prices. Customers walked in and they said a car now that had to achieve 27.5 miles per gallon really didn't fit them, and that truck or SUV really did. And so we had this explosion for 20-plus years in the truck business, but the car business was really terrible. The other thing is that the legacy costs that the domestics had, because they'd been around a long time, they had very attractive contracts for labor, defined benefit on health care. For example, at one point, GM was covering over 1 million people on health care costs, which led to, for the whole industry, a couple of $1,000 cost disadvantage vis-a-vis the new internationals, particularly the Japanese and Koreans that came here to build. So in a sense, there were a lot of mistakes all over the place. The government, certainly management, labor, but this is an enormously productive industry, and it was an industry that could afford rich labor contracts until it became much more globalized.
All right, let me bring Peter Marisi. I know we were having some technical difficulty. I hope you were able to hear a lot of that.
Okay, I did.
Okay, good. The question now, of course, is the industry coming to the government and suggesting that it needs some cash fast. Now, I don't know how you see the particulars of the situation now. What do you think about this request for cash? Should the government help?
Oh, I don't think the government should give them any cash. The Detroit Three were in a lot of trouble before gas prices recently rose. They were in a lot of trouble before the credit crisis. GM has been bleeding cash for many quarters now, as is Ford and Chrysler. Daimler got rid of Chrysler because they couldn't make any money with the company and saw no prospects of doing so. If we were to give General Motors some money now to acquire Chrysler, this would just put off for 18 months, 2 years, the inevitable reckoning. One way or another, one or all three of these companies is going through Chapter 11. One way or another, the pensions are going to fall back on the pension guarantee corporation the federal government runs, and that's going to be a crisis for the federal government because it doesn't really have adequate assets for all the pensions throughout the country that it's guaranteeing, because that wasn't set up properly. But the bottom line is, we've heard over and over again from General Motors remorse and repentance and how they were going to finally upgrade themselves and be truly competitive with Toyota and the other transplant automakers that very successfully make high-quality cars here in North America for some 20 or more years, and they just haven't been able to deliver on that. The bottom line is that General Motors just doesn't make cars people want to buy, and neither does Chrysler. Chrysler has a couple of good brands that would be very attractive to a Japanese manufacturer after it went through Chapter 11 and was rid of the UAW contract, because it would nicely complement their lines, and one of those Japanese manufacturers could fix what is wrong with Chrysler in those lines.
All right, let me ask David Cole, what's the argument for the government stepping in to help?
Well, first of all, I don't think Peter is very up to date on what's going on in the industry. He does not have deep knowledge on the industry, and if you understand this industry and what it's gone through and where it is today, it's dramatically improved from where it has been in the past. You look at the products, 3 of the last 4 cars of the year at the International Auto Show were GM products. It's producing very well, but it has a very difficult time. Now, the bottom line here is that the cost of a failure and the cleanup of that mess is a whole lot more expensive than the prevention of that problem.
You mean the cost of the broader economy, is that right?
Oh, the cost of the broader economy. You look at a cascading impact in terms of tens of thousands, over 1 million jobs. You look, and I am basically a free market guy, and in principle I would agree with Peter. But when you look at the impact of this industry, the multiplier on jobs in this business, which are higher than any other industrial sector, we're talking about a shock that this economy really cannot afford to take, versus the cost of prevention, which is nominal. And I think what we have seen now is that the government does understand that. They are moving forward, I think, with, we don't know exactly how this is going to be shaped yet, whether it's the DOE money related to the fuel economy standards or the bailout of Wall Street. We're not sure how that's going to occur, but I think the government basically recognizes that if they let this thing get away, we have a real problem. And the future close by is really quite bright. If you look at capacity reduction, the cost reduction, particularly next year with a new labor contract, and then third, the pent-up demand, this is a very difficult period, but the near-term future is really very bright. And if you look at the functionality, the capability of this industry, it's dramatically improved from where it is. I'm not sure people outside understand that.
Well, let me let Peter Morici respond, particularly on the issue of if you let these companies fail, then the cascading impact on the broader economy are just too hard to contemplate. So it's worth stepping in now. What do you think?
Well, it's worth stepping in now if you accept that argument, if giving them the money would keep the catastrophe from happening. But in my mind, putting Chrysler and General Motors together and then subsidizing them, the only way you're going to keep the catastrophe from happening 2 and 3 and 4 years from now is if you're prepared to write them a check every year from now and forever. Because General Motors, even with its new labor contract, is still going to have higher labor costs than, for example, Honda will have at its new Indiana plant. It's still going to have a more bureaucratic management structure, more difficulty and higher costs in developing new products. I mean, General Motors certainly has some winners. It just never has enough of them. Its products have an old shelf life because it costs too much to develop cars inside of General Motors, and that's quite apart from its UAW contract problems. My feeling is this is going to happen one way or another, so we shouldn't throw good money after bad.
I'm very sorry, but we're at the end of the program.
Peter,
so
you just don't know this industry at all.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Peter Morici and David Cole, thanks very much.
And again, the major developments of this day: stock markets around the world shot back up. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained nearly 900 points. And with 1 week to go until Election Day, Republican John McCain vowed not to give up. Despite trailing in the polls, Democrat Barack Obama urged his supporters not to relax. An editor's note before we go: last night, one of our guests mistakenly said that former Minnesota Senator David Durenberger had been convicted on felony charges of failing to file Senate financial disclosure forms. Durenberger pleaded guilty in 1995 to misdemeanor charges and paid a $1,000 fine. The last senator to be convicted of a felony was New Jersey's Harrison Williams. In 1981, he served 21 months in prison for bribery and conspiracy. Tonight's edition of Frontline explores the challenges about Afghanistan facing the next U.S. president. We'll see you online and again here tomorrow evening. I'm Jim Lara. Thank you and good night.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer is provided by
oil, energy, the environment. Where are the answers? This isn't a liberal or conservative issue. It's a human issue. As an energy company, Chevron has a great responsibility. So we've improved our own energy efficiency 27% since 1992. And now we ask you to join us in one of the most important efforts of our time. Using less. Will you join us? Chevron, human energy.
That's 0% financing on 11 different models featuring Toyota's legendary quality. No other car brand can make this offer. So hurry in now and see how much Zero can save you on a new Toyota.
Save by Zero. Save by Zero.
I'm Rick Dancer, and this is my wife, Kathy. In my 23 years as a journalist, one thing I've heard over and again from voters is why can't campaigns focus on issues, not negative attacks? That's why we're committed to a clean race that focuses on making the Secretary of State's office nonpartisan, supporting campaign finance reform, stopping the commingling of political funds, and ensuring that only legal citizens vote in Oregon. Throughout our travels in Oregon, this is what people have told us Oregon needs in a Secretary of State. I'm Rick Dancer, and I'm asking for your vote.
2 ways to fight high gas prices. 1, combine shopping trips. 2, save money when you get there.
That's why I come to Walmart. Save money, live better, Walmart.
This is outrageous.
Jeff Merkley backs a bill to take away your private vote in union elections.
I'm not going to go vote in November without a secret ballot. Why would I do that for a union?
I think card check is an invasion of our privacy.
Without privacy, there's intimidation.
Card check is totally against our rights and liberties as Americans.
Tell Jeff Merkley, don't take away your private vote. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is responsible for the content of this advertising.
As Americans, we are entitled to a private vote.
The grand opening of Oregon's largest flooring center, just out 503 Carpets.